They were not merely actors, they were living sculptures of strength. Forged in the gyms and training halls of the mid-20th century, these men carried the physiques of champions into the world of cinema. Before their names lit up theater marquees, they stood victorious on bodybuilding stages, their muscle carved through years of relentless discipline. When Hollywood needed warriors, demigods, and larger-than-life heroes, these were the men they called. This is the story of the true strongmen of classic film. The bodybuilders who stepped from opposing platform into the spotlight, bringing with them the kind of power you can't fake. Clint Walker, the towering figure of the American frontier. Clint Walker was the kind of man who could make a horse look small. Standing at an astounding 6 feet 6 inches and weighing well over 230 pounds, his frame was a marvel of proportion, broad shoulders, a deep chest, and an easy, unforced strength that seemed to radiate from him. Born Norman Eugene Walker in 1927 in the river town of Hartford, Illinois, he grew up in a working-class world where strength was more than a showpiece. It was a tool for survival. Before the bright lights of television, Walker worked on riverboats, in factories, and in the merchant marine. These jobs carved both his body and his character, steady, dependable, and quietly commanding. That presence caught Hollywood's attention, and soon Walker was offered the role that would define him, Cheyenne Bodie, in the long-running series Cheyenne. Walker's Cheyenne was more than just a cowboy hero. He was a wall of muscle wrapped in a calm, measured demeanor. His massive frame filled the screen without ever feeling exaggerated, and when he moved, whether swinging into a saddle or throwing a punch, it was with the easy efficiency of a man who didn't need to prove his power. He could stop trouble with a glance. Yet when action came, he was as swift as he was strong. Unlike many action leads of the time, Walker did much of his own stunt work, making the physicality of his roles utterly convincing. Viewers believe him because there was nothing to doubt. His size, his power, his control were real. In an era that celebrated the rugged, self-reliant hero, Clint Walker stood head and shoulders above the rest, literally and figuratively, as a man whose strength was matched only by his quiet, steadfast nature. Mickey Hargitay, from world champion to Hollywood leading man. Mickey Hargitay's path to stardom began far from Hollywood's sound stages. Born Miklos Hargitay in Budapest in 1926, he grew up in a country still reeling from war. Physical culture was already in his blood. He trained in athletics and soccer before immigrating to the United States in 1947. Once in America, he discovered the sport that would define his early career, bodybuilding. With tireless dedication, Hargitay developed a physique that combined size, symmetry, and definition in a way few could match. By 1955, he stood at the pinnacle of the sport, winning the coveted Mr. Universe title. His look was not just about raw muscle. It was about proportion, balance, and natural grace that made his strength appear effortless. The same qualities that impressed judges soon caught the attention of entertainment producers. Hargitay began performing in fitness exhibitions, nightclub shows, and television appearances, quickly establishing himself as one of the most recognizable physique champions in the country. His transition to film was a natural evolution. Hollywood's adventure and fantasy genres needed heroes who could look convincing in armor, togas, or battle gear, and Hargitay fit that mold perfectly. He took on leading roles in action-packed productions, including The Loves of Hercules, 1960, where his commanding build and calm confidence gave mythological legend a tangible reality. Beyond the screen, Hargitay became a symbol of the bodybuilding lifestyle in mainstream culture. His story resonated because it was more than muscle. It was about a man who crossed oceans, remade his life, and built himself into a champion through discipline and persistence. In Hollywood, Mickey Hargitay brought with him not just a champion's body, but a champion's mindset, proving that true strength is forged long before the camera starts rolling. Reg Lewis, the sculpted Mr. America. Reg Lewis stood as a living definition of the word classic. Born in 1936 in Niles, California, he began training in his teens, inspired by the ideal physiques of the Golden Age bodybuilders he saw in magazines. Lewis wasn't interested in sheer bulk alone. His goal was symmetry, proportion, and definition, so precise that each muscle seemed placed with the care of an artist. His dedication paid off when he claimed the Mr. America title in 1957, cementing his place among the most admired physiques of his generation. Hollywood soon came calling, not just because Lewis had the muscle, but because he had the look, broad shoulders tapering to a razor-trim waist, a chiseled jawline, and the confidence to carry both. While many of his bodybuilding contemporaries gravitated toward European sword-and-sandal productions, Lewis found a place in American cinema, most famously appearing opposite Tony Curtis and Claudia Cardinale in Don't Make Waves, 1967. In that film, he played the role he knew best, the ultimate beachside Adonis, embodying the Southern California fitness lifestyle. What set Lewis apart on screen was the same thing that set him apart on stage: presentation. He moved with precision, never sloppy or stiff, every gesture controlled, yet relaxed. He didn't need exaggerated stunts or overacting to make his presence felt. His physique did most of the talking, and his composure did the rest. Off-screen, Lewis remained a respected figure in the bodybuilding community, often returning to exhibitions and mentoring younger athletes. His career bridged the gap between the competition stage and Hollywood glamour, proving that bodybuilding wasn't just about lifting weight. It was about building a life, a presence, and an image that could stand tall under the unforgiving lights of both the theater and the sun. Dan Vadas, the powerhouse in a loincloth. Dan Vadas had the kind of build that made costumes optional: a massive chest, wide back, and arms so thick they seemed to belong on a comic book page. Born Konstantin Daniel Vafiadis in 1938 in Fresno, California, he served in the U.S. Navy before drifting toward performance work. It was his time in a daredevil motorcycle stunt troupe that caught the attention of casting agents. Here was a man with the size of a heavyweight and the fearlessness of a fighter pilot. In the early 1960s, Vadas was swept into the booming sword-and-sandal craze. His debut as the titular hero in Hercules the Invincible, 1964, set the tone for his screen persona: a rugged, unpolished warrior whose strength felt utterly authentic. He didn't move like an actor pretending to be strong. He moved like a strongman adapting to acting. In fight scenes, his strikes were broad and crushing. His throws looked like they could truly send a man across the room. While much of his career was filmed in Italy, Vadas returned to work in U.S. productions later in life, appearing in American westerns, action shows, and stunt roles. His physical dominance remained intact, even as his acting range grew. He was the kind of performer you could place in a gladiator arena, a saloon brawl, or a military barracks, and he would still look like the most dangerous man in the frame. Vadas's appeal was rooted in authenticity. He wasn't a polished, classically trained screen idol. He was raw power, shaped by hard training and real-world grit. In an era that celebrated muscle, his presence reminded audiences that strength could be as unrefined as it was overwhelming. On screen, Dan Vadas didn't just play Hercules, he embodied the idea of strength itself. Brad Harris, the clean-cut colossus. Brad Harris looked like the prototype for the all-American action hero: square jaw, sunny smile, and a body that could have been sketched by a comic book artist. Born in St. Anthony, Idaho, in 1933, Harris grew up in California, where sports were a constant part of his life. At UCLA, he studied economics, but it was his work in the weight room that quietly built the foundation for his future. He trained with the precision of a sculptor, adding muscle that was both aesthetic and functional. Harris began his Hollywood career doing stunt work, where his combination of strength and agility quickly set him apart. He could leap, roll, and fight on camera without breaking the composed presence that casting directors loved. But his career took a decisive turn when he traveled to Europe during the early 1960s. There, the booming sword-and-sandal film market was hungry for men who could believably fill the armor of gladiators and the sandals of mythical heroes. In films like Goliath Against the Giants, 1961, and Samson, 1961, Harris brought an athletic fluidity that many musclemen lacked. His movements were crisp, his fight choreography sharp, and he performed much of his own stunt work, a rarity in that era. He later transitioned seamlessly into Eurospy thrillers and action-adventure films, proving that his physique wasn't a costume, but a tool for a wide variety of roles. Even as his career spanned continents, Harris retained the clean-cut image that made him approachable to audiences. He was the rare strongman who could be both the unstoppable force and the gentleman hero. Whether in a loincloth, a tuxedo, or street clothes, Brad Harris projected the same truth. His strength was not an act, but a part of who he was. Peter Lupus, the Tower on the Mission. Peter Lupus was the kind of man who could walk into a room full of big actors and still look like the largest presence there. Born in Indianapolis, Indiana, in 1932, Lupus grew into a towering 6 feet 4 inches frame that carried over 250 pounds of muscle in the prime of his career. His background in bodybuilding was no hobby. He He was a serious competitor, earning titles like Mr. Indianapolis and Mr. Hercules, and standing shoulder to shoulder with the best physique champions of his era. His big screen break came when Hollywood's action-adventure market was still hot for sword-and-sandal heroes. Lupus played the title role in Hercules and the Tyrants of Babylon, 1964, bringing to life a version of the mythic strongman that was both imposing and physically believable. His Herculean build, broad chest, powerful legs, and arms like carved granite gave the character an undeniable realism. He didn't need oversized weapons or dramatic costumes to sell the idea of strength. He was strength. But Lupus's career took an unexpected turn when he transitioned to television, landing a permanent spot as Willie Armitage on Mission: Impossible. For 7 seasons, Lupus played the team's silent, muscle-bound operative, a man who could lift, push, or break whatever the mission demanded. His presence on the show became iconic, not because of flashy speeches, but because audiences trusted that if physical force was needed, Willie would deliver it. Off camera, Lupus maintained the same discipline that had built his physique in the first place. He trained consistently, stayed in competition-ready shape for decades, and became a quiet example of how to merge athleticism with longevity. On film and TV, Peter Lupus proved that true muscle can be as dependable as it is dramatic, and that sometimes the strongest man in the room is also the calmest. Lenny Montana, the strongman who stole the scene. Before Hollywood knew his face, Lenny Montana was already a giant in another arena, the wrestling ring. Born Leonard Passifaro in Brooklyn, New York, in 1926, Montana grew up in a tough environment where size and strength were more than advantage, they were survival tools. Standing well over 6 feet and weighing nearly 300 pounds at his peak, Montana became a professional wrestler in the 1950s, billed as one of the most powerful men on the circuit. His sheer bulk, broad shoulders, and crushing grip made him a natural crowd favorite. His entry into film came not through the usual casting calls, but through his unique combination of physicality and charisma. Montana was first used in Hollywood for stunt work and bit parts, where his intimidating build made him ideal for henchmen, guards, or bodyguards. But in 1972, he stepped into a role that would cement him in cinematic history: Luca Brasi in The Godfather. Though his screen time was brief, Montana's presence was unforgettable. In every frame, he projected the quiet menace of a man capable of anything. His size alone told the audience that this was a man you didn't cross, and his deep, deliberate voice made his few lines resonate even more. That combination of towering muscle and understated delivery gave Luca Brasi a realism that no amount of costume or makeup could achieve. Even outside The Godfather, Montana appeared in a variety of American TV shows and films, always leveraging his imposing build. He was proof that a strongman didn't need to swing a sword or wear a cape to leave an impact. Sometimes, raw size and controlled stillness could dominate a scene. Lenny Montana was more than just muscle. He was muscle with presence, and that's what made him unforgettable. Ron Ely, the Tarzan who did it all himself. Ron Ely didn't just play Tarzan, he was Tarzan in every way that mattered. Born in Hereford, Texas, in 1938, Ely grew up athletic, strong, and unafraid of physical challenge. By the time he entered Hollywood, he stood an impressive 6 feet 4 inches with the kind of broad shoulders, powerful legs, and lean muscularity that came from dedicated training rather than a makeup artist's touch. When Ely was cast as the title character in the 1966 to 1968 Tarzan TV series, it was a role that demanded far more than wearing a loincloth and posing for the camera. This Tarzan spoke in full sentences, carried an intelligent, confident demeanor, and did almost all of his own stunts. Ely swam across rivers, wrestled stage crocodiles, swung from vines high above the ground, and fought choreographed battles without the safety nets common today. His body had to be ready for anything, and it showed. Ely's physique wasn't about bulk, it was about athletic functionality. Every muscle was there for a reason: to climb, swim, sprint, and fight. He brought a believable realism to a character that could easily have been reduced to fantasy. Audiences didn't just see Tarzan, they believed they were watching a man who could truly survive and dominate in the wild. Off-screen, Ely's discipline remained constant. He stayed in shape well beyond his Tarzan years, later moving into other action roles and even hosting television programs. In an era when many actors left the hard work to stunt doubles, Ron Ely was the rare leading man who took on the danger himself, a true physical performer who gave audiences the real thing. Smith, the Iron actor. William Smith didn't just play tough, he was tough. Born in 1933 in Columbia, Missouri, Smith built his body through a lifetime of athletics, heavy training, and relentless personal discipline that rivaled competitive bodybuilders. His muscle wasn't purely for display. It was dense, functional strength, the kind forged through years of physical challenge. Even in his youth, Smith's wide chest, rope-like forearms, and solid, squared-off shoulders gave him the presence of a natural fighter. Before he became a familiar face on screen, Smith was a decorated athlete. He excelled in sports, served in the U.S. Air Force, and trained in multiple forms of combat, from boxing to judo. That combination of real fighting skill and bodybuilder-level conditioning would become his calling card in Hollywood. By the late 1950s, he was breaking into film and television, and before long, he was one of the most in-demand tough guys in the business. Smith's career spanned over 300 roles, but he was most often cast as a force of nature, the kind of man whose very silhouette suggested danger. Whether in westerns, biker films, war dramas, or TV action series, his physicality was never in question. In fight scenes, he hit hard and moved with the precision of a trained athlete. In still moments, he projected the quiet intensity of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to make his point. Off-camera, Smith was known for maintaining his conditioning year-round, continuing to train like a competitive athlete well into his later years. He was proof that real strength lasts when it's built on a lifetime of dedication. In a Hollywood full of actors pretending to be tough, William Smith was the genuine article, iron in body, iron in spirit, and unforgettable on screen. Lou Ferrigno, the gentle giant who turned green. Lou Ferrigno's story is one of strength forged from both determination and resilience. Born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1951, Ferrigno faced significant hearing loss as a child, a challenge that might have discouraged others from pursuing physical competition. Instead, it fueled his drive. At 6 feet 5 inches and over 270 pounds his prime, he built a physique of monumental proportions, broad, full-chested, with arms and shoulders that seemed designed to carry the weight of any role, real or imagined. By the early 1970s, Ferrigno had conquered the bodybuilding stage, winning IFBB Mr. America and 2 Mr. Universe titles. His size and symmetry were unmatched, and his rivalry with Arnold Schwarzenegger, documented in Pumping Iron, 1977, made him a household name in the fitness world. But it was television that would immortalize him. In 1977, Ferrigno stepped into the role of the Hulk in the Incredible Hulk TV series. Painted green and dressed in little more than shredded trousers, he became the physical embodiment of raw, unrestrained power. Unlike other superhero portrayals, Ferrigno didn't rely on special effects to appear formidable. His muscle was real, his presence undeniable. When he roared, audiences felt it. When he lifted, audiences believed it. Off-screen, Ferrigno remained as disciplined as ever, balancing acting with ongoing fitness work, and later taking roles in action films and guest appearances that always celebrated his commanding frame. Despite his size, Ferrigno carried himself with a quiet, approachable dignity, the very definition of a gentle giant. From championship stages to television legend, Lou Ferrigno stands as proof that real muscle and real heart can make a character, and an actor, unforgettable. Reb Brown, America's action everyman. Reb Brown had the look of a man who could run through a wall, and then flash you a smile while doing it. Born Robert Brown in Los Angeles in 1948, he was a natural athlete from a start, excelling in football before transitioning to bodybuilding and weight training to develop the thick, broad-shouldered frame that would become his on-screen signature. Standing 6 feet 2 inches and carrying his muscle like a seasoned linebacker, Brown was built for physical roles. His early work in television included appearances in action-heavy shows like Kojak, The $6 Million Man, and Happy Days, but it was 1979 that gave him his defining introduction, suiting up as Marvel's Captain America in 2 TV movies. In the red, white, and blue uniform, Brown brought a clean-cut heroism and believable physicality to the role, sprinting into battle and taking on stunts that demanded real athletic endurance. The 1980s cemented his status as an action staple. Brown headlined cult classics like Strike Commando, 1987, Uncommon Valor, 1983, and Cage, 1989, where his blend of size, speed, and a booming on-screen presence made him a natural leader in any ensemble of mercenaries, soldiers, or fighters. His fight scenes were direct and impactful, the kind where the audience never doubted that the punch landed. Off-screen, Brown was known for his affable nature and straightforward dedication to staying fit. He trained with the same focus he brought to his roles, never letting his size slow him down. In an era of over-the-top action stars, Reb Brown stood out for his authenticity, a genuine athlete whose muscle and energy translated perfectly to the demands of non-stop, high-intensity adventure. Sam J. Jones, Flash Gordon in the flesh. Sam J. Jones didn't just play a comic book hero, he looked like one stepped off the page. Born in Chicago in 1954 and raised in Sacramento, California, Jones developed his physique through sports, weight training, and military service in the U.S. Marine Corps. Standing 6 feet 3 inches with a clean-cut jawline, broad chest, and athletic proportions, he had the kind of frame that could carry both armor and a tuxedo with equal credibility. After a stint as a model, Jones began picking up small television roles in the late 1970s. His breakthrough came in 1980 when he was cast as the title character in Flash Gordon, a lavish, high-energy adaptation of the classic space adventure. Jones' muscular build gave the intergalactic hero an immediate physical presence. When he fought alien warriors or charged into battle, audiences believed he could win. His performance combined square-jawed earnestness with the agility and stamina of a real athlete, making him a perfect fit for the role's demands. Though Flash Gordon became a cult classic, Jones' career didn't stop there. He appeared in action-oriented projects like Code Red, The Spirit, and numerous television guest spots, often cast as the dependable, physically imposing lead or authority figure. His training background kept him in camera-ready condition, and his ease with physical roles made him a favorite for directors who needed muscle and charm in the same package. Off-screen, Jones maintained the same discipline that had carried him from the Marines to movie stardom. Whether in a science fiction epic or small-screen action drama, Sam J. Jones brought an authenticity to heroism that only comes from real-world strength and dedication. He didn't just act the part, he looked and moved like a hero. Rockne Tarkington, the trailblazer of muscle and motion. Rockne Tarkington brought a unique kind of presence to the screen, a combination of power, grace, and a warm charisma that set him apart in an industry where muscle often came without personality. Born in Junction City, Kansas, in 1931, Tarkington grew up athletic, excelling in sports that built both his physique and his confidence. By the time he arrived in Hollywood, he carried the tall, broad-shouldered build of a man who could hold his own in any fight scene and still charm the audience in quieter moments. Tarkington broke barriers early in his career, becoming one of the first African-American actors to land recurring guest roles in action-heavy network television during the 1960s. His breakthrough came when he appeared in Tarzan's 3 Challenges, 1963, where his athleticism was on full display alongside the Jungle Lord himself. Agile, fast, and convincingly strong, Tarkington brought a realism to the action that only comes from genuine physical capability. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, he built a diverse resume, appearing in The $6 Million Man, Magnum P.I., Bewitched, and numerous adventure and crime shows. No matter the setting, from exotic jungles to gritty city streets, Tarkington's presence was undeniable. His movements were fluid yet powerful, the mark of someone who understood how to control his body as both an athlete and a performer. Off-screen, Tarkington was respected for his professionalism and the discipline that kept him in top condition throughout his career. He proved that a strongman could also be a versatile actor, blending muscle with nuance. For many viewers, he was more than an action figure. He was a trailblazer, showing that strength on screen could be matched with depth and dignity. John Saxon, the martial arts muscleman of Hollywood. John Saxon brought an uncommon mix of old-school physique training and martial arts mastery to the screen, giving him a physical presence that was as sharp as it was strong. Born Carmine Orico in Brooklyn, New York, in 1936, Saxon grew up athletic and disciplined, developing his body through weight training before stepping into acting. His symmetrical build, wide shoulders, lean waist, and defined arms gave him the look of a classic physique competitor, while his later dedication to martial arts refined his movements into something even more dynamic. Breaking into Hollywood in the mid-1950s, Saxon was initially cast in teen dramas and westerns, but he quickly proved he could handle more demanding physical roles. By the 1970s, he was working alongside some of the biggest action stars in the world. His most famous role came in Enter the Dragon, 1973, where he stood toe-to-toe with Bruce Lee. Saxon's fight scenes were fast, precise, and believable, the product of a man who had the conditioning of a bodybuilder and the agility of a fighter. Throughout his career, Saxon appeared in over 200 films and television episodes, including Battle Beyond the Stars, Cannibal Apocalypse, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Whether wielding a gun, throwing a punch, or moving through a choreographed duel, Saxon brought the controlled intensity of a man who knew exactly what his body could do. Off-screen, he maintained his training for decades, continuing to spar, lift, and stay in fighting shape well into his later years. John Saxon represented a unique breed of Hollywood action star, a man with the physique of a strongman, the technique of a martial artist, and the acting skill to make every move tell a story. From the golden age of Hollywood to the television screens of mid-century America, these 14 men proved that strength is more than muscle. Each carried their own story of discipline, perseverance, and the drive to shape themselves into something greater. They weren't just actors, they were craftsmen of the body, ambassadors of physical culture, and reminders that dedication leaves a mark long after the applause fades. In an era before computer effects and camera tricks, their power was authentic. When they lifted, fought, ran, or stood tall on screen, it was the real thing, the result of years of training and the will to keep pushing forward. Their legacy is not only in the films and shows they left behind, but in the inspiration they still offer to anyone striving for excellence. If you've enjoyed this journey through Hollywood's strongest legends, show your support by liking this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear which of these muscle-bound icons inspired you most, or who you think should be featured next. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories, strength, and spirit of cinema's unforgettable greats.